Appreciate it. We're going to give you an overview of the budget, and then you can ask any questions, or you can answer questions if you want. No? You don't want to answer any questions? Okay. Well, we're going to give you an overview of the budget, and then see if you've got any questions on what we're going to cover. But first of all, I want to tell you the process and what it entailed. But before I do that, I want to recognize the team behind me. Sean is out of the office, but Lindley, right here, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Lindley Leeper, the Chief Budget Officer.
Then we have Carmen, and I don't want to butcher her last name. I said it really well yesterday,
did,
but I'll
you
let her
know.
do it.
Carmen Arieta Candelaria, Chief Financial Officer.
And David Almonte.
And David Almonte, Deputy City Manager, Health and Safety.
So I want to introduce them because this was a team effort. I think a lot of people have asked me how involved have I been in the budget. And really, whenever I was appointed on the 20th of May, I asked staff to put together a budget and balance it. And they had talked about having input and maybe not having an opportunity to have as much input before. And I said, well, I want y'all to have as much input as you want. And so they went with the departments, or had meetings with the departments, and balanced the budget. What came forth was a 5% across the board reduction with a pretty hefty tax increase. But they really looked at ways of not to decrease the service and ways to minimize impacts as much as possible. So the recommended amount earlier was closer to 5 cents. It's about 4.7 cents. What we did is we really took a hard look at that 5% reduction, and we put back those things that we felt like were not realistic, that needed to be placed in there. There were high priorities, not only in the goals and the strategic plan, but in the council's key focus areas and in the community's interest in terms of what they feel like is most important. I mean, one thing that's important is the permitting process, getting that out the door as quickly as possible. Another thing was a police academy. That's put back in. And the ways that we provide library services. We tried to minimize any impact to that area and to keep the hours where they were by being as creative as possible. This budget includes 2.3 cents that's set aside for quality of life bonds and incentives to businesses that have been committed to. And I will tell you that we reduced that a little bit down to 2.1. So that's what you see in your documents, a 2.1 cent increase to the tax roll. So 1 penny is going to incentives, the other penny is going to quality of life bonds. That'd be no different than if you're at your house and you say, I'm going to buy an ATV for my child, and I'm going to buy, a riding lawnmower, or I'm going to put in a pool, whatever. You buy extra things for your house, you got to make the payment. So there's been some commitments that have been made, but we have to make the payment. So some of the things with regard to the operations itself, they've maintained where they are, and I really want to take my hat off to the staff for their hard work and how they really dug deep to make those adjustments. We do have in the budget built in an opportunity for an incentive. We want to do a one-time lump sum payment if possible, and that's going to be dependent upon how revenues perform and how expenditures are kept in line with the budget. So that means what it means. If we have savings in mid-year, I'd like to give a one-time lump sum payment to those that haven't had that in the past based on performance. So that's another area that I think is important to mention. The other thing is with regard to the training. We want to align the training with our philosophy. And our philosophy, quite simply, is going to be to really kind of put into action those words that we put in all our documents in terms of high customer service and a high-performing organization. We want to be able to demonstrate that through our action. And I think the staff is doing a tremendous job in that already, but we want to get better at it. And we want to see if we can provide some efficiencies. And you've heard this before, and I think it was written about today. One of the things I was asked about, we want to look at cross-functionalities in the organization. How can we have cross-functional teams put in place? And I think that'll accomplish a couple of things. Number one, it'll create some internal teams. And secondly, we'll have a succession plan where you can have a succession implementation instead of a plan. And by that, we'll put people in leadership positions that maybe haven't had an opportunity to do that before. And or we'll have people working together. Not that they haven't, but we want to formalize that process so that departments work cohesively with one another so that when they're up presenting in front of council, we don't have 4 departments coming up and a couple of them not really being involved with that particular item. We want more of a unified approach to how we provide the services. We think if we do that and we listen to the surveys that we get back and they make adjustments, we think the services will be improved. So that in a nutshell is the overview of the budget. I mean, I can go into detail with regard to there's 100 positions in there that we're reducing in the overall number of the number of personnel that we have, so we're going to go under 6,000 people. And that's a lot of it's vacant positions. There's some real people in there that we're going to move around to other departments. I've made that very clear to our departments that we need to place those people in other areas. So that is what I conveyed to our organization. So that's the overview I had. I want to open it up to my team here and see if they've got any points they want to cover that I may have left out.
I just wanted to follow up with Mr. Gonzalez's with regards to the property taxes, some of the challenges that we had when developing this budget. First and foremost, the direction from the mayor and the council, and followed up with Mr. Gonzalez, is we tried to minimize the impact on the property tax rate. And one of the challenges that we had this year is, for the first time in about 20 years, we saw a reduction in the preliminary certified values that we received from the CAD. And so that was one of our first challenges. And the second challenge is trying to look at how much the actual impact was going to be on the property tax. So what we've done is we went through that process, and we've come up with a proposed tax rate increase of 2.1 cents. But in reality, we've looked at the effective tax rate and based that on the current preliminary assessed valuations. We're actually below the effective rate. We're just slightly below the effective rate. So I think that we've done a really good job in trying to minimize that, the property tax impact, given the debt obligations that we have, as well as the pressures that the incentives have placed on the property tax. So, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lindley. She's going to go over the process and our calendar where we're at right now.
Good afternoon. So, as you may know, we have often had a formal budget process that lasted throughout the month of July. This year, we are introducing the budget. The city manager will do that actually on July 15th instead of July 8th. He'll do that in a regularly scheduled council meeting, and then we'll follow it up with a workshop-type format where we will work through each department's budget in the main conference room here at City Hall. We'll cover those budgets, and as the city manager said, we're going to go till we're done. We'll review each of those over a 4-day period, beginning on July 21st. We'll skip July 22nd during this, when council is scheduled, and then go on July 23rd, 24th, and 25th, which is a Friday. That calendar is posted on the website, and as you may be able to see behind me, there is a new banner that links from the city's homepage to the OMB website. There it is, the fiscal year 15 El Paso City budget. You'll also notice at that banner site that we have a new tool that's been released today, and it is in line with the City Council's strategic goal of employing or garnering more constituent input. This new link, which is called the Budget Think Tank, allows the citizens to come into the website and actually give us cost-saving measure recommendations or service recommendations. They can ask for feedback from us, and we will post all of these requests along with the responses on the website frequently, probably every 24 to 48 hours. And then at the end of the budget process, we will provide a summary on the website that shows all of the various constituent requests or recommendations along with the appropriate follow-up and responses. And I think that then is it. Mr. Almonte?
Do you have anything to?
No, I don't have.
Okay. We'll open it up to any questions you might have.
Can you talk about you said 100 positions will be eliminated in the city?
You want to talk to that?
Are we talking about just how it's going to work? Are there going to be any layoffs or anything like that? Or is anybody getting let go, I guess?
No layouts.
No layouts. What we're doing right now is we've identified some of those positions are vacant, so we're also identifying those positions that are filled, and we're going to work with our Human Resources Department to try and place all of those people within vacant positions that we currently have. Okay?
You called it a hefty tax increase.
We didn't say hefty.
Okay, well, this tax increase could be interpreted as hefty.
Right.
How do you justify that to the residents?
Well, there's been commitments that have been made by this organization for quality of life bonds that citizens voted on. And secondarily, there's been incentives that have been committed to bring in new businesses into the city and expand the existing businesses. So that's where the 2 cents is going, directly towards that. And when you look at the average bill, it's cheaper than having a cell phone in terms of the average household and what they pay for versus what you pay for on a monthly bill on your phone. You pay more for a phone than you do for city services, for just our taxes alone. So I hope that answered your question. Yeah.
So, I mean, just in general, to kind of summarize here, the budget looks like you're asking departments to decrease their budget by 5%, right? They've done that, all of them?
Not all of them. I mean, they all submitted that, and then we put things back in based on the strategic plan and based on council key focus areas and what the community said was important to them, like I started out with, like I started saying earlier.
And then the property tax you're asking to go up, how much by what's the number there?
It's 2.1 cent, but in actuality, the effective tax rate that we're calculating right now is 70 cents, 70.21 cents.
Okay, so we're charging more in property, the city, what is it, departments are going to be operating on less, and you're expecting the city to offer better customer services, right? You're looking to better unify departments, that sort of thing. It looks like you're looking to do more with less. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so.
When you stepped into this role as city manager, what did, you know, like you said, you're trying to do more with less here. That's your proposed budget. Is El Paso city government operating effectively right now? Efficiently right now? Is that a term?
Well, I think you can always get better as an organization, and I think that that's what I've been saying to folks who've been asking me. I need time to review how we do things here and how we can make adjustments to how we provide things. I mean, a lot of times when you ask people to do it for less, they automatically think that you're cutting service. And I think if you focus on the things that are most important to the public and change, like the public has changed. I mean, 20 years ago, you didn't have that computer in front of you. You know, now you do. 20 years ago, you had a phone that's probably this thick. You had to carry it around in a bag. Now they're this small. You know, they're even on your, as a watch, you can talk to it. So everything has changed around us, and we need to change with it. And so I think if we can provide services differently, I think we need to look at it. And that's all I'm saying.
Is this the first time, out of curiosity, with the city website? It sounds like there are going to be workshops, right, that are available to the public to come in and kind of put their input and get departments
Yes, we
together.
can.
But
Yeah,
when we talk about the website, is this the first time that basically any citizen can go on and say, just in general, is it a free format? Like, hey, you know, I really think that the roads here on the northeast stink, especially dire. I really want to see more lanes. You're smiling really big, so I must have hit something good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It has an open comment section. So there are a couple of required fields. Are you asking for us to respond to you? And we do want a return email address, and then whatever your suggestion is or whatever your comment is, and then we'll respond.
What
So
are the dates that this is available?
it's available now,
Until?
until probably budget adoption or shortly thereafter.
When we say budget adoption, when's that expected?
That is expected to happen August 19th. You're welcome.
So is this a temporary increase? Are you hoping as you get into this position and you make things more effective, that savings, you'll find savings and you can lower this tax rate?
I think certainly when we can find savings, you want to come forth with as conservative a budget as you can. And so it would depend. I mean, I think we have more commitments that we make, and we're selling more bonds, and there's a cost to that. And I think we need to balance that with the operations and how we do business. I mean, you know, a lot of times people think you need to throw people or money at things in order to solve it, and sometimes you don't. And it's just a matter of thinking differently. And I don't want to have massive change overnight, and I think that I don't think that'd be healthy for anybody, for any organization, for any one person. So I just think that some of these things that we're looking at and how we can do it better. And I gave you an example with the cross-functional teams. There's several other examples that I've shared with staff, and there's things that they've got great ideas that they're bringing forth that we're going to want to look at implementing. And so that's going to be the role of our departments and our office. Is do you have ideas? How can we marry that up with a process and make it better?
Mr. Gonzalez, on the other end of that, the fiscal year 2014 adopted budget increased significantly to the adjusted budget because of some decisions that the council made throughout the year.
Right.
How do you kind of hold the line or make sure that that doesn't happen moving forward, that you adopt a budget and then end up with something that's...
You're talking about the vacillation of revenues and things like that? Well, I think that's what you're hearing from us today. We're presenting a realistic budget. What I ask staff to do is to look at our revenues and look at the actual, not the projection. And I know there's been studies that have been done, and they're good studies. But we really did I think staff did an excellent job of looking at all our revenues and looking at the last 5-year actuals and using that as a base to even project for this year. And then after you aggregate those and then you add a percentage on compounding a basis, then you do the same thing for 14 and then you do it into 15. So they did that with sales tax, and I asked them to do that for property tax as well, and they did it for all revenues across the board. So I believe this is a more realistic budget, and I would say to you that, obviously if we go to war with Iraq again, if there's something that happens in Africa and the world changes, the economy can change. So I can't predict what will happen in that area, but that can impact your economy. That can impact us here in El Paso, just like it did last time.
How does the tax increase compare to in previous years?
Last year it went up 2 cents.
No, I can address that.
6.4,
Okay, so last year in, for example, I'll start with 2013. 2013, it was 65.84. 2014, 67.83, and this year 69.95. So 2 cents.
And I'll tell you, if you look at the history, back in '04, you were at almost 72 cents. So you've got more stuff, more things, and obviously the base has grown too, the valuation. So you got to take all of that into consideration. And as you grow, there's more things you have to pay for, not only from the standpoint of new facilities, but from the standpoint of being able to open up a new facility when you build it, to be able to operate it.
You mentioned also that the preliminary assessment values from the CAD came in. Were they lower than?
They were lower, and that's what Carmen said.
Then expected? Than expected. There was some information that we received from the CAD. Protests were lower. The number, the percentage of residential permits were down. They did an extensive valuation on commercial properties last year, so there wasn't a significant increase this year. So those are the reasons that we received from the CAD. Okay, and it was $429 million difference. And there's a chart in the budget message. There's a detailed chart, and you can see that highlighted where we see that for the first time in 20 years, in the last 20 years. So I'm going to look back at that.
What is the total, I'm sorry, what is the total budget number for, it's 800-something million dollars. What is it exactly right now?
For this year or for fiscal year 15?
For both, actually, what's the difference, I guess, what is this
So
next fiscal year and what is it this year?
For fiscal year 14, the total all funds budget is $801 million. For fiscal year 15, we're proposing a budget of $826 million.
And now that you've looked at the budget, what do you think the projected path of El Paso's tax rate is? Do you see it staying the same? Do you see it increasing as we have to pay for more things?
Well, I think it goes back to your question earlier. You had a great question, and that was, when we find savings, how are we going to treat those, and would we make adjustments in the tax rate going forward? And the answer is yes, certainly we would, if they were significant enough where you would make a noticeable adjustment. And those savings could also pay for these additional bond commitments and for incentives to businesses. I mean, the idea is for you to balance your growth and to be able to not only depend on, in this case, residential, to look at bringing in more businesses so you can balance how you charge for services.
Do the ballpark have any impact on this budget?
Not on the tax rate.
El Paso Electric 1% increase to franchise fee equals $4.8 million in revenue, $8.56 average increased annual residential bill. Are electric bills going up by $9 a year, a month? What are we talking-
That's a year.
That's a year.
$8.56. You
Was that
rounded up quite a bit.
I'm sorry?
It was $8.56. You rounded up quite a bit.
What did I say?
You said $9.
So El Paso Electric is getting an increase in its rates, or does that?
That's a franchise fee.
something different?
That's a franchise fee. They use our right-of-way, and that's like someone using your land and you charging them a rate for that. And we need to charge a fair rate for that, and that's a revenue that's consumption-based. And we thought it was a fairer fee than just a property tax increase, which would have been more regressive for people who can't afford it.
How much more do you want people to pay to go to the zoo?
So the zoo has a $2 increase in the proposed rate. It's going from $10 to $12. That's the proposal. And then the other fees go up by $2 as well. Okay.
Is that across the board for all the Parks and Rec services?
So for Parks and Rec, it varies, so there's different fees, and I have that if I can send it to you later, but for the zoo, it's $2. Okay?
Mr. Almonte, can you address the collective bargaining and how that's going, when you expect to have that completed, and how that impacts the budget?
Thank you. That's a good question to ask. We are in the middle of collective bargaining with both police and fire. It's progressing very nicely. I anticipate we'll probably finish the police department in July, and fire we anticipate to finish in July. I've incorporated some expenses for the collective bargaining agreements, and it's proceeding in a cordial manner, and we should finalize those by the end of July. Okay?
So some of those contractual obligations are already included?
We've already incorporated, they're in the budget.
As well
I
as
might say.
additional costs for some of the academies that are coming up?
Yes, we've accounted for all of that, as those are the things we're trying to balance is fairness both of the uniform, non-uniform, in all areas of pay or benefits, and to make sure that we continue to try to stay #1 safest city in the United States, and make sure that we have academies to replace and grow the force in the police department.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I just want to clarify and make sure that it's clear that this is a work in progress. I would tell you that collective bargaining could have an impact to the numbers. There's no layoffs. I want to make sure there's nothing reported on that. It's a balanced budget. I think that's important to mention as well, and we're meeting our commitments. The commitments that have been put in place for quite some time with regard to incentives for businesses to bring in more jobs, which I think is a priority for this community, and then also to pay for quality of life bonds, which is also a priority. And we're going to work very diligently to ensure that it's as equitable as possible throughout the city. The quality of life is improved in all parts of the city. Thank you.